Welcome to ThugCrowd Radio. Please listen to this important disclaimer in its entirety. All participants of this ThugCrowd Radio episode are characters. None of the stories told during these episodes are based on facts, truth, or reality. All works of fiction displayed during this episode that resemble real-life situations are coincidental and are not meant to serve as guides or tutorials to commit any crimes in any country. Please consult an attorney for local laws and regulations. And as always, trust your inner criminal.
What's up?
Who this?
This is Biggie Smalls coming at you on Hot 95. Brooklyn represent. We the illest on this.
This is Sway. Hold on 1 second. I'm just going to tag people. Cool. Awesome. So everybody, welcome to ThugCrowd, episode 45. Had kind of a rough start. I accidentally put a bunch of stuff out that was all from previous streams, and I realized that the background here is going really fast. This GIF, for some reason, OBS is speeding it up, and it's going so fast.
I was like, what?
It's kind of cool. I mean, that's a little bit closer to an accurate representation of attacks. So, yeah, they are going back and forth, going crazy. But so everybody, how's everyone doing?
Yeah, I think yeet.
Good. Eat now, got some sleep.
Thanks everybody also for joining us too during the State of the Union, which I know is also live right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's definitely like a thing that nobody should be missing, right? So we really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I think Twitch is updated. We're still live with B-Sides Philly.
It does? Oh, excellent. Let me just update that right now. So actually, Pico, do you want to tell us a little bit about B-Sides Philly? What happened?
I just kind of prepped that morning, figured I'd take some equipment, took way more than I needed, and set up a table. I didn't really get to QA any of the audio process, so in that stream there's no audio whatsoever. I did remix it with some background joint that I uploaded. I think everybody's face stayed out of the screen, but the overall intent was I threw a switch down on a table. I had my laptop, and then I had a Raspberry Pi. Mm-hmm. I was shitting around with it forever, and then I realized when I moved the Pi further in front of my laptop, I unplugged the fucking network cable. So that was... and I'm like, I'm pontificating. I'm like, oh, I can't set up this IP address. What am I doing wrong? I'm if-configuring, and I'm going nuts. And I look at it, and then once I see that, I just plug it in front of the camera. Of course, I'm like, oh.
So everything went to plan then?
Yeah, right. It was cool.
Like a classic ThugCrowd stream. Just tons of technical difficulties. We get it though. That was awesome though. I'm glad that you went out there and actually started streaming and stuff. It's cool because we did the stream from DEF CON, and that was awesome being able to have people join. But then I was thinking about how awesome it would be if we were to have people who wanted to stream, who are part of our group, go to different, have a little table set up and do the thing that you did, which would be awesome to do in the future, for visibility as well as just being able to have some funny stuff to happen, as they typically do when you're just launching around at a con.
The DEF CON stream though was like so well timed with the hotel internet just dying at the same.
Of course.
ThugCrowd wants to stream, like fuck fuck the hotel internet, like.
Yeah, that one I ended up streaming off of my phone with a Bluetooth mic. It was really good. That was awesome. But yeah, so everybody, we have an awesome guest tonight. Which has he joined our chat yet?
Yeah.
He's awesome. He's we're gonna talk about DDoS mitigation and all sorts of other war stories from the internet with pwrcycle here. Which I'm really excited about because there's a lot of stuff that goes on with you know, there's a lot I guess of sort of blanket ideas about how to deal with things like DDoS attacks, but they're a lot more textured than they have been. It's not as simple as just pinging a bunch. There's a lot of interesting vectors that people use, and so it'd definitely be interesting to hear a bit the other side of it, where you actually have to do something about it at your company. So I'm very excited to talk to him. Also, this is the show notes too. We heard that there are some antivirus and some browser plugins that block you from viewing. Hey, Dan, you're a little staticky right now. I heard that there's some browser plugins that block viewing this. So if you do get that, if you get any like warnings from viewing this page, please screenshot it and tweet at us because I'm interested to see, because this is a Perl script that's from like a paste bin somewhere that just has been reworked into show notes, and it's not on its own going to be executed on your system. So interesting to see that a page itself, a static page, is being marked as like a malware. So yeah. So you guys want to get into the news?
I want to share something cool I did this weekend. The question we always
Oh
fuck
yeah.
up.
Oh yeah. Well, what'd you do this weekend, DNC?
I actually went and saw The Prodigy after 20 something years. So they toured and their tracks that were on the Hackers soundtrack, and it was a great show. But I think the most cyber larpers. Like, I saw some cyber haircuts that I've never seen before. I saw a neon shaved top knot, like a samurai top knot, but also glow in the dark. Like, it was some fucking next level cyber. If anyone plans on going to DEF CON, you should maybe look at a Prodigy crowd and go like, yeah, that's the kind of cyber I want to look like.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got to up our game for the cyber goth, cyber culture, I guess, aesthetic when we're out in public. So
Take some trips to Hot Topic.
Branded ski masks, maybe.
They don't have any trip pants anymore there, so kind of bad. But
need more Jinkos.
yes. And also shout out to Fractal Zero for subscribing with Twitch Prime. Thanks everybody for that. Oh yeah, also we've been sending out all the CLSSPs kind of staggered, but they are coming out though. We sent a couple batches of them. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, or you are a guest, or you are a member of our beloved crew, you'll be getting one at some point very soon. We're just throwing them all out there. A lot of people have signed up and become patrons just to get our cert, and we have not yet got anybody who thinks that it's necessarily a bad thing. So we're excited. So thanks everybody for supporting us and our meme cert, which is not for fraud. The other thing that I really kind of have to mention, there actually have been some people that have well, first one is they have DM'd us their personal details, which you should not do. Everybody who has DM'd us and given us their information, they set up a secure channel to give them to us, and they lie in ephemeral state as I write them on the envelope and then do not save them anywhere. Like, I'm taking very extreme pains to not save anybody's information, and there are still people that are trying to just DM us randomly their address. So it's not free.
I propose that from now on, if people do that,
we sign them up for random hilarious things.
I mean, as long as we put it out there, that's what we're going to do. Maybe that might deter people. But yeah, definitely don't send people, especially just the hacker podcasts. Just send random people your address. It's never a good thing.
Can we just step back for a second? Like, we're talking about people who are interested in information security and are worried about crowds of thugs that might have their secured information. So if you're going to send your private information to a crowd of thugs, you might have just fucked up.
I mean,
Not saying that we would do anything malicious, but just the fact that I've been taking a lot of lengths to make sure that everybody who gives us their data is that data is treated with the same security that I would treat my own personal data. And yeah, that's definitely a thing that you should be wary of, especially when you're just doing stuff like this online. Because I realize that there's a lot of communities and streams and content creators that do giveaways like this, and you definitely have to take good precautions for it. Either setting up a PO box or whatever, and then also giving your information to them in a secure fashion.
Yeah. That being said, though, it is a requirement that you send a scanned copy of your passport from now on. Send that to you. Give us in a cheat suit, and he'll get you squared away.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, like, when we are not we're definitely not collecting data. I was making a joke, but think about if you're into information security, think about the security of your information.
Absolutely. The other aspect of it that I've found interesting is there also have been people that are DMing in a way that makes me think that they just want the certification so that they can use it on their resume or on LinkedIn to actually actively trick recruiters and people that are potentially going to hire them. And first and foremost, it's the joke for this purpose, but it is absolutely should be explained. Because you don't want to have we don't want to be able to report on some data breach that happened because their CISO got hired with a fake CISSP, which would be the fucking absolute worst thing possible. So please do disclose that if you do decide to put it on your LinkedIn, on your resume. We'll be trying to make some sort of LinkedIn like badge or something, some sort of group that we can use to have people able to track and link to it. We definitely do not promote people fraudulently trying to up their creds. We're not a cert mill or a diploma mill. It's just a joke for people that support us.
I mean, those the companies that might be confused between the CLSSP and the CISSP on a resume are likely the companies that need security the most.
Yeah.
And if you're using it to bolster your your own credentials, you likely are not correct for that role. So maybe don't take roles that you're not, you're unsuited for.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to say this out in the stream. I know we might be going a little overboard with over explaining it, but I definitely have been seeing this, and I want people to just be safe first and foremost, and also honest, because we do stuff as a joke, and sometimes people don't necessarily take everything that we say. They might take it literally, and we definitely don't want people to endanger themselves or others in any way. So thanks. It's our PSA for the day. Anybody have any other words on this before we move on to the news?
Safety first.
Don't be silly. Don't use it as an actual replacement for a CISSP. It's a joke. Damn it! I'm gonna reiterate it. It's a joke.
Pork chop sandwiches.
Pork chop sandwiches.
Much funnier joke than the CISSP, which is also a joke.
It's a much better joke. Yes. Much more tasty.
So let's get into the news. And if anybody doesn't have it yet, I'll post it again in the Twitch chat. Please, again, send us any screenshots if any antivirus gets triggered by this. So, yeah, the first piece of news we have here. So this is Google's Chrome extension. There's a that checks if your. It's a weird way that they worded it. Checks if your passwords are still secure. or checks your passwords are still secure. Regardless, there's a service that Google is now running called Password Checkup that is going to be supposedly hashing passwords client side and sending them over to Google to see if they are in a database. So I think that didn't have it been pwned, and Troy Hunt already start making something like this before have it been pwned?
Yeah,
Yes,
he
with one
integrated.
pass.
Yeah, he integrated with OnePass, but he also like this thing as well. If it's hashing your password client side, you already know. Like you can reverse the hashing algorithm and go, okay, it's I don't know what it is, but let's just say that it's SHA-512 or something. You're like, all right, now I've captured all this other data that has these SHA-512 hashes. I know what to do with it. So I don't know how great this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. It sketches me out a little bit, but at the same time, it's definitely useful for people if you have a plugin that says, "Yo, stop using like Big Dog 1 or whatever the hell your password is, Hunter 2, as your password." This has definitely been used before, and it's in a database somewhere because those things are definitely useful. I mean, I have a few password collections that I use to do the same thing on my own at home. But I mean, typically it's like I use, I don't know, that's like overkill. I guess like I have like a dedicated drive for that. Not everybody is carrying around a hard drive full of passwords from like breaches. So
Yeah,
Without using a password, without using a password manager, people are going to use passwords, and eventually everybody's password's going to be in this thing that has an alert saying your password's been breached at some point. And it's just going to become a desensitization thing where people are like, oh yeah, there's that stupid warning, let me just ignore that. Like, it's going to end up being the equivalent of, are you sure you want to submit this form insecurely? You know what I mean?
but
yeah.
it's also like that password list that was on GitHub, and the guys, somebody raised an issue. Can you please remove Dolphin from the password list? It's my but like I don't think like that it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that if you're using a password safe, specifically the integration with whatever the one pass, I think it was, the last pass one, and you're automatically generating passwords for things, and they're like, you're generating 18 character, 24 character, like full character set kind of passwords, and it pops up and says, yo, your password is in the breach. It's like, okay, so it's in a word list of like 10 billion words. It's getting hashed, and like, if somebody's going to use that word list and also or attempt to crack the hash off it or something like that, and it's salted, it's still going to be pretty difficult. Like, I don't see the really strong randomly generated passwords, their reuse as terrible as like the Hunter 2 Big Dog 1 type thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely think it's a step forward, though. Definitely helpful for people. I guess we'll just see how it actually affects the overall reuse of passwords, which I definitely think is interesting.
On the topic though, like Troy Hunt had that post where he was saying that he uses whatever one is it OnePass? OnePass, okay. Anyway, and he was saying that you can use the facial recognition with the iPhone or your smartphone or whatever to unlock the password safe. But I just find that hilarious because one of the things I like to do in the office was to pick up people's phones and just show it to them, and they look really confused, but they're not under duress, so it just unlocks like straight away. So then you could take it one step further, show it to them, they get confused, open the browser, show it to them again, they'll be more confused, and they've just entered their password without having to like press anything.
Yeah,
it's just, I find it how far do you go of like use these password safes to make it secure, and then you've gone full circle.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely a lot of work to be done in this sort of field, but I think definitely, though, that there are, this is definitely a good step forward. But speaking of I don't know. Speaking of Google, I guess it's the same thing. The next story we have here is about some Google Play Store apps that have a bunch of malware and phishing scams, and they all seem to be those like different sort of camera apps. So top three are Pro Camera Beauty, Cartoon Art Photo, and Emoji Camera. Get 1 million downloads each, and then a bunch of other ones here. And yeah, they got a bunch of malware and stuff loaded into ads, which isn't surprising. But yeah, it's one of those things where you see like the watermarks of like that Me Too app and some other ones that you're like, these people are just owned. Like, yeah, your photo looks kind of cool, I guess, because you have like an emoji and like, you know, a dog filter, but like that's a small price to pay for, I guess, having your phone completely just rooted by some third party company. So yeah,
I think it's the lack of Photoshop ability, I guess. Like the whole thing is that you can do all of these things with Photoshop, right? And people have been able to do it for ages. And all of a sudden, like people who have no idea how to use Photoshop can be like, "Oh, I want the puppy dog ears. I want the rainbow tongue or whatever." Like, you know, and so they just search for an app, and away they go. And all of a sudden, like, and the people who are doing it probably aren't too technical either, right?
yeah.
That's
But
the target market.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff too is like it's the same as like any other sort of big trend. It gets integrated into, or people see like people using things like Snapchat and Instagram and even the Facebook filters, and they just want to do that same thing. People want to expand on that, but they just, I guess, you know, just like every big trend will start throwing, you know, shitware into the phone or into the app itself, and then it just becomes completely unusable, just spyware infected application.
I think it comes as well to whenever something is free, like, you know, you're the product. So
Absolutely. It's definitely something to look out for, though. If you're seeing people use these kind of apps, just say, yo, make sure that, I don't know.
Make sure that your dog face filter isn't, you know, stealing your information.
Yeah, exactly.
Get the dog face filter from GitHub and compile it yourself.
Exactly.
Open source life, open source. I want to see a project that is like all of the filters, but open source. Somebody start that.
I think that's possible.
The new dog face.
Yep.
It's not dog face. It's the new dog face. Yeah.
RMS face swap.
I feel like this is an RMS argument.
Yeah. This is GNU Earwax, Toe Jam.
Oh God, that video will never leave my mind.
The next story that we have on our list here is pretty interesting. We talked last week a bit about Nest security, camera security. This week, somebody had a weird encounter, I guess, with somebody I guess who seems to be an avid user of smart home technology, the article says. Apparently, they put their 7-month-old baby to bed, and then they heard a weird noise coming from their room. And then when he went in, he heard a deep male voice coming from a Nest security camera that was installed in the nursery. And this person, I guess, was talking to this baby while it was sleeping, and then turned the thermometer up to 90 degrees, which is pretty fucked up, actually, if you think about it. It's not. It's like very, very creepy. And I mean, as more people have more integrations for smart homes, this is just going to get weirder and weirder until there are very, very rigid, like, actual guidelines for these technologies to use, because these things are being accessed by people on Shodan with like default credentials. Like, if you're, this is on your network.
Says though, this guy was an avid user of smart home technology, and he has like 16 cameras or something in his house, and 2 thermostats.
Man, there's all sorts of weird going on. I think this is one thing you can point to for advocacy of hackback, though.
At what point does Nest get liability on them?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, it's sort of out of the box configurations have always been a problem. You know, like you're kind of expected to know how to secure your devices and set them up, but the vendors have never given a shit ever, really.
They kind of have
Yeah.
to now, though. California passed legislation recently, so they have to start giving a shit pretty soon.
Yeah. No, it's definitely it's really scary. Just to think about. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we would say and talk about as an attack vector and something to look out for. And you say, but what if someone's looking at your kid while they're sleeping? And people are like, oh, like you're just being paranoid. It's like, no, people do this all the time. People do this kind of shit all the time. As creepy as you can possibly think somebody could be with internet and technology, there are people that are 10 times creepier than the way that you could imagine and would want
There's
to try to leverage it.
We talked about IoT thermostats before and turning an office somewhat like I told a story on the podcast where somebody had turned an office up to like something and then bricked the thermostat and it was really hot. But in this case, I think it's super different because the guy who did it knew there was a baby there. And I'm pretty sure 32C with a baby, like who's probably wrapped up in a blanket and shit, is not very safe. Like that's
Absolutely. No, I mean
That's
that's
actually
awful.
a really good point. Jesus, man, that's so horrible.
Yeah, like what
Yeah.
a dickhead.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, one could make an argument that that's attempted assault, or at least attempted assault, if not attempted murder.
Yeah.
It's like if you analyze the situation, because they've done enough to analyze the technology, they can clearly analyze the people as well and go like, oh baby, maybe I won't set it to 32 degrees. Like, you know,
Yeah, for real. Jeez,
maybe.
man.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
People are evil and fucking terrible. Hack those people.
So speaking of hackback, this flaw in RDP clients, which I thought the term reverse hack is really funny, but hackback, I guess, in PCs, I guess. So there's a bunch of RDP clients that have some code execution vulnerabilities and some other nasty stuff. Basically, if you are connecting with it to an RDP server, you can actually do weird stuff like modify files on the host on the client's computer, and be able to actually just mess around with them and stuff, modify the clipboard. Our desktop, which is the older version, I guess, of open source RDP client, that's the one that comes with default in Kali Linux, and it has this vulnerability, which I think is kind of funny, especially because everybody who's doing that is running it as a root. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of this stuff to look into.
It's with the Linux based clients as well, like they're straight up, it's pop and calc, and if you pop and calc as root, like and finding these things on Shodan as well, like if you laid a bunch of honeypots and somebody attempts to RDP into your box, it's kind of their fault, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like that goes into some really, really murky territory of hacking back and setting up, malicious honeypots. I mean, it's I feel like definitely different jurisdictions and different, I guess, laws and customs would be the thing that would, I guess, carry this thing through. I don't really know. But I definitely think it is funny though if you have some, honeypot server but screenshot on Shodan. This is like private server. You can't use this. Then some idiot obviously is going to connect to it, and then then they just get their Kali Linux box destroyed, which is obviously dual booted with Windows 8.
The Windows one. The Windows clipboard one, where like I don't like the feature of being able to copy and paste even in and out of VMs or in and out of like RDP or anything like that. I think it always freaks me out. Like isolation is the key. But in the POC that you like in the video that shows the POC actually, it copies and pastes the file and then it executes like I don't know, I guess it's the meta key R and the run box comes up something and then it adds something to the startup folder. There's definitely way better payloads you could think of, like if you dropping Mimikatz and emailing yourself the creds or something like that. Way more malicious.
That sounds like a fun weekend project though. If you guys, by the way, it's kind of tangent, but you guys see that that USB drive that some guy found that instantly blue screens Windows boxes, and he found that it actually works over RDP as well now.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the USB drive that someone found in like seal shit.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that too.
What? I missed that. What happened there?
Oh, some researchers found like this like year-old like thumb drive that had been eaten by a seal, and they just popped it in their computer and pulled a bunch of video off of it. I was like, wow, wouldn't that be a neat attack vector? Feeding seals USB drives to own scientists.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
APT shit.
Who's
have
really
one
gonna
that-
expect that? You know?
I have one that got run over by a car and it broke the connector off, but I was able to dump the chip itself. That was interesting. It was a fun project. There was nothing on it. It was like empty and had a Word document with some trash in there. But yeah,
Huh. But I think the goal here is to start feeding USBs to all sorts of animals to start to start spreading malware.
Yeah.
Kind of like they're attractive.
what about like birds? Like, you know how they
Yeah.
like birds eat seeds and then they spread the seeds and shit. Like,
It would be that avian RFC, except for you're tunneling it through avian carrier, right?
That's definitely tunneling.
it's the
Definitely
avian,
right there.
the avian equivalent of the sneaky net.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
No, it's definitely something to look out for if you're a researcher for people feeding USBs. So the next one is interesting too. I mean, I've been seeing this being used a bunch lately. The ThinkPHP RCE. So apparently there's this article here talking about some crypto miner that is infecting Linux and macOS with miners using the ThinkPHP exploit. So there's this whole kit that's doing it. It's a Trojan called SpeakUp. And it's basically like using ThinkPHP as the initial vector and then going through a bunch of other CVEs and trying to use those for rooting the actual machine and throwing on some miners on some big servers. So
And scanning the local network as well was interesting.
Mhm.
That was a thing. That's the thing that's something I haven't thought about for a while. But like, yeah, botnets once they infected were often used to scan local hosts and pop stuff over SMB and whatever. Like more advanced
Yeah.
techniques than the initial, like the initial vector is like really shitty, but then after that it starts ramping up.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely something to look out for. I've never really used ThinkPHP or the CMS that it uses, but
Well,
I don't know if you've seen it live.
Sorry, if you look at the distribution graph, you can see that it's heavily used in China, like a bit in Mexico. Like it seems like that it's targeted towards that market, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, definitely interesting. No, I've seen a couple POCs for it floating around, so definitely interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's as well like some of the other funny things as well that are just like little side notes, like base64 encoding the payloads and things. Like typical like things that you'll see in Apache logs is like a chunk of base64 for like an unknown reason. And yeah, it's like really simple tricks, like salted base64. All of a sudden, you don't get detected by an IDS so easily.
Yeah, it was interesting though. Salted base64. I feel like that's definitely not to give anybody any ideas, but I don't know why people aren't using custom character sets for base64 more. It's pretty simple.
Base32
I've wondered
was
that
actually something that popped up.
Yeah,
because it's just so like slightly more obscure than base64.
Yeah,
Slightly.
but it's so readily and easily accessible. It really is surprising that it's not used way more. Probably would be right.
I think with
So-
like if you look at HTML emails and stuff like that, where inline images are all base 64 anyway, so all of a sudden a lot of the things that might often be detected won't be detected because it's just assumed that it's an image or some sort of it's got the same
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that recently. An uptick in it, at least. Like the text, like just regular plain text that is an image actually, but it's just base 64 encoded, so it comes through.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can throw like a GIF header on it or something. We actually there was that interesting GIF. That's a bit of a tangent, but that GIF in Discord this week that crashed the mobile client.
Wait, what was that?
Yeah, what was that?
Cool.gif.
Oh yeah. Wait, did we talk about that?
No, I don't think we did.
Oh yeah. Discord. Well, actually, we can talk about that in a little bit when we get to the Discord story here. But yeah, that was very interesting too. Yeah, let's shelve it for then. The next one that we have here is two hacks. So this is interesting for me to read. I don't know if you guys what your take on it is. So there has been. I'm not sure if this is specifically. Yeah, this is specifically for cryptocurrency exchange attacks, but there's two groups that are supposedly responsible for 60% of all the publicly reported hacks that have been happening. The interesting thing is that they've classified it into code names alpha and beta for the bigger group and the smaller group respectively. And so there's the alpha group, does way more attacks, and they don't seem to be as money motivated, and they seem to be way more sophisticated at actually moving money. And the beta group apparently is not as good at that, but they're still committing a lot of the crimes. So yeah, I don't know too much about the state of security within cryptocurrency exchanges. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but I don't know, DNZ, if you have any thoughts on this.
I mean, not really. I guess there's like you got sort of your Chad group who are the betas, funnily enough. But yeah, like two groups seems the way that it's categorized, like that seems to be pretty blanket. Like I feel like there's in the cryptocurrency world, there's lots of little cells doing their own little things. Like whether they're actually exploiting things, um, yeah, I don't. It's there's lots of like it's being such a shady, unregulated sort of world. Like as much as we have regulations coming in and they're doing stuff for the larger currencies, larger exchanges, and stuff like that, there's still a lot of stuff going on. So I'm not really sure how accurate that there's exactly just like the alpha, totally ultra sophisticated hack group that's made up of like top tier black hats or something, and then there's like the chads that are just making cash. Like it seems very very blanket. So I'm not. I'd need a little bit more information to really say that that's how it goes down. But I can definitely vouch that you can join a million pump and dump discords that have like um, scams going on, like people trying to scheme and scam like their way into crypto riches. So
Hey, did you say they weren't financially motivated though, according to the one report?
Yeah, this report was saying that the first one didn't seem to be as financially motivated and that they were more technically motivated to just see if they could actually own these certain exchanges or carry out these kind of attacks. That's the firhave group.
That's pretty significant, no?
well,
I don't know how they really they have come to that conclusion.
So the thing is though, like if you're the sophisticated attackers just seeing if you can own an exchange, you're not I mean, everybody in this situation is financially motivated, basically. Like you don't have like there are the few academics and they're going to be public about who they are and the research they're doing and reporting bugs and things like that. That's the type of I guess, person. But when you've got like a sophisticated attacker, they're either planning or they're selling it or they're doing, there's some other route that they're going to be like using this information for. Like they're not just going to be like, oh, let's see if we can own an exchange and get access to millions of dollars. Like there's got to be a payoff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just saying this as the experts say Alpha is a giant, tightly controlled organization, at least partly driven by non-monetary goals, which is that's the interesting thing. So that's the bigger group that is,
Let's say they have all these exploits lined up. They know they can own a bunch of exchanges. They're tightly controlled, and let's say they're like a total like proper organization. They're performing ops where they're whatever, right? Maybe their motivation isn't known today. And maybe their goal is to simply like put a certain currency through the floor. So they might not be monetary oriented in like, I'm going to steal this currency, but they, might stop trading on one thing so that they can make shadow trades in the background somewhere else and profit on a margin somewhere else. So like, I don't see that like the attacks themselves might not be monetary oriented, but like I would bet that there's some other form of like money trading hands elsewhere.
Yeah, I would imagine like it's hard to like say like give that without a secondary like response or reason, right? Like say not monetary and then just like cut it off there. Like it's not and the article doesn't seem to really explain that any further. But I would imagine maybe targeting certain exchanges in certain geographic areas. Like, but
so let's say like one thing we've talked about before is 51% attacks, pretty common. Like hear about them fairly regularly. And in the case of a mining pool, like somebody might own a mining pool and not take anything from the wallet. They might deny to service it. They might cut it from the blockchain for a minute, or do something else. And then even though they could have just taken money there, there's like ulterior motives for removing a mining pool from a blockchain because, it might have N percentage of total miners for that currency or whatever. So generally when you like, I can't imagine that there's any real group out there that is codename, the codename Alpha Group. I can't imagine that group is out there doing these things without some kind of like back channel that they're doing. It's just if they are so sophisticated, they're sophisticated enough to think of not the most obvious attack route,
Yeah. No, definitely interesting though to see. I guess we'll see where this goes. But yeah. Then, well, speaking of millions and millions of dollars, the next one we have here is the person who stole $5 million by SIM swapping gets 10 years in prison. So yeah, this is an interesting story. There's a few other ones, but this person has stolen a lot of money by SIM swapping and Bitcoin wallets. And yeah, he's one of the first people I guess is getting charged for this sort of thing, which there's tons and tons of people who are SIM swapping, and I don't know why it's not going down. It seems I don't know why there's not more training on this sort of thing. But yeah, this person is going to jail for 10 years for this.
The telcos just don't give a shit.
Well, they might start because there have been people who have been suing like their cell providers for criminal negligence.
Yeah. I mean, every single thing that people do now is tied to some sort of 2FA with their phone. And like, there's stuff that's required. Even like Discord, you can't use Discord without a phone. If you want to get verified, you need a phone. Like, there's no other way to do it. Same thing with Bitcoin, same thing with everything, really. And so, yeah, I definitely think it speaks to a larger problem that I'm hoping is going to get resolved at some point. But using only a phone for 2FA and the ability for people to do for like literally like a 14-year-old kid to just pay someone $5 to SIM swap on like raid forums or something is just pretty fucked up that people can just do that.
I think the key here is like the $5 million. Like this is one thing I've always seen with well, I mean, this is just my perspective, but like with law enforcement and kicking people's doors in and putting people away. If somebody's getting hurt or if some money is getting stolen, these are like the key driving factors between, like, you know, money in an injury, I guess, or money in hurting people is what drives law enforcement. And if you're gonna steal $5 million, regardless of how you do it, you best be prepared to go to fucking jail.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really know what you expect, but
yeah, like you're gonna just steal like 5 million crypto and be like, yeah, just like sim swap them on some forum, and then like, okay, pimp alex91@hotmail.com. No, this is not a well thought out plan.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's definitely just you get what you deserve. I mean, definitely don't do that kind of shit. And yeah, I definitely am hoping that there are more sort of trainings for this kind of thing. Same thing with like swatting and anything else that just requires no skill but going on the phone and sounding convincing. Yeah, I mean, this kind of thing it's just, I don't know. There needs to be more training for it.
At the same time, if you know he got to keep that $5 million, or if he'd already hidden it away, it's a pretty decent trade-off.
I mean, I guess, but you might get sued, and there might be other additional things that happen as well.
But this is the crime versus reward payoff. If you feel like that the reward is worth the time, but it's rarely going to be. Like, it's, especially if you live in the US or like Australia or any country that you can get employed to do hacking, like, you can make a lot of money without doing any crimes at all.
Yeah,
like you can stay at home all day, make a shitload of money, do all the things you want to do, and you don't have to go to jail. Pretty sweet.
Dash brings up an interesting point too for the SIM swapping thing. He's saying SIM swapping should be harder to pull off, but account verification breaks down when the frontline employees are afraid of a bad customer service review costing them their commissions for the whole pay cycle, which is a matter of fucked incentive structures as much as anything. So that's definitely a huge thing, is that there's a lot of the customer service, the forward-facing customer service people that have to deal with the kids that are SIM swapping. Those sort of people are, like, you know, they're afraid of getting in trouble in their, you know, usually minimum wage job at a call center somewhere, or at you know, Best Buy or something. And it's definitely that whole structure of how, you know, you pay for, or you get money for, you know, the amount of activations that you have, or the amount of account services you do is pretty bad.
I can attest to how easy it is to get people the other end. When I used to sell cell phones, we'd have people come in all the time with like not knowing their credentials, like, but like obviously this, like, the whole like account belonged to them, and it was like ungodly easy to get them to just be like, oh well, you know, we're not supposed to do this, but and like let us into their accounts without like the necessary stuff. Just because you have like an angry soccer mom standing next to you, like saying like, well, what's going on?
Yeah, no, I can see that too. It's definitely the human aspect of that sort of thing is definitely a huge factor. Like just seeing and identifying with people who are frustrated.
There was a department, well, actually not one department, multiple departments at Telco that I spent some time at, where they were a reseller of the larger telcos stuff, and basically the wholesale ordering required client certificate to be installed in your browser, and because of the super high turnover of the actual of the call center, like, because nobody wanted to work there, they basically would hand out these certificates like they were candy. And I don't know what it's like now. This is a significant time ago. But if you had that certificate, you had access to provision like all of the landline services, including DSL and other things. And so if you were like some guy on raid forums and you just go get a job there and start, you know, slinging SIM swaps for $5 because you think it's a good idea, like it's, you know, it's not that difficult to get access legitimately, because you're supposed to be doing your job with, you know, an ulterior motive.
Absolutely. So speaking further of sim swaps and other sketchy shit, there's an interesting article that Forbes put out, which actually came out the same day as our last podcast. We didn't get a chance to talk about it. And so this is a whole thing about just the different weird shit that happens on Discord, which we're no strangers to, of seeing people promoting this sort of thing. But there's basically, they go into all the different sort of cybercrime that happens, whether it's carding or DDoSing or identity theft or whatever sort of other weird shit. They are definitely, the FBI seems to be looking at it, and if they weren't before and they suddenly are now, that's pretty surprising to me. But definitely seen a lot of the sketchier Discord sort of go off the radar after seeing this post. So yeah, if you are on Discord and you are using it for crime, you are going to get caught at some point. That's all I will say.
Yeah, Discord. I mean, it's like the IRC boom when everyone you knew was on like IRC, ICQ. I guess in the States it was probably AOL, like AIM. It's normal people finding this chat service that is everyone seems to be using for voice and stuff. Like we're using it right now, but it's not a very good platform. Like it's not. It's literally that episode of Silicon Valley where they figure that everyone that's using their chat service is like 14-year-old kids and then a bunch of creepy old guys.
Yeah.
And like I think we do pretty good to remove people who are kind of, you know, maybe young and in the scene, like, and just remove them from our Discord for the fact of we're talking about how to do things. I don't know. It's not appropriate content, I guess, is the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
And we don't know everyone who's in our Discord either. It's a public Discord. A lot of people join it, and if we notice people who like maybe aren't appropriate, then they get removed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really thing. It's the IRC Wild West all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same sort of things to remember about IRC as you do with this. There's a lot, like the security structure of Discord is the same, I'd say, as that. I mean, there's lots of, you know, access and permissions stuff to deal with, as well as the fact that there's a lot of things that I think people might not realize about how their communication actually gets parsed by Discord. Because the thing that we've all seem to know now is that you know, they don't strip any EXIF data off of anything. There's no sort of file filtering at all. So if you upload something in Discord, if you upload a picture from your phone and you have GPS on, everyone else is going to have your GPS location, you know.
It is actually stripped. Sorry, GPS is stripped now. Yeah, but I've received iPhone images and I've looked at them and they have all of the other EXIF data about the image, but it removes the GPS. So there are some things being removed now, but not a great deal.
Yeah. Same thing with files though, file uploads, which we can talk about the GIF and the Spotify link. Those sort of things. There's tons of stuff that if you are like there's just everything is still young with Discord, and the same with anything is you know, so there's people are able to do sort of weird stuff that you wouldn't think that they'd be able to do anymore, you know, like uploading just straight up viruses, like well-known viruses that if you download them on any computer, they will be you know, flagged immediately and removed even by the most basic virus definitions. We saw that before actually with, remember that somebody had came in with an image that had there's a JPEG that had like a payload in it for Windows that got removed. But images are cached locally by Windows, Discord, and I think by Linux as well. They're cached locally, so then it just goes onto your computer, and then it's just a payload on there for further use. There's tons of different things like that where you got to just realize that security of being on there, you know, whatever you upload onto there, whatever you get shared into your channels, those are all sort of, they don't have as much security as you might think they do. So if you are on Discord doing weird shit, you're definitely not safe. And now
I
the
think-
FBI is really actually looking.
One of the things I think has powered this this boom in using Discord as opposed to Slack or other hosted platforms is the how easy it is to write bots using their APIs for Python and Node and other languages, Go as well. You can write a bot really easy. You can click on the API developer thing. It's like click setup bot, bang, here's your key. Run this example code, you have a bot. And now people who would have traditionally back in the day written IRC bots are just using Discord.
Yeah. Also, the interface like encourages like multiple, like being in multiple servers and whatnot.
Quote servers. It's spoiler. There's no actual servers.
Guilds.
Guilds, yeah.
No, I mean it's definitely there's a lot to consider about it. There's a lot of I see a lot of just weird shit on Discord, weird communities, definitely sketchy stuff, and that sort of thing. Just I don't know. I mean, you're just not going to be safe on it. As someone said in here, what do they say? Why would using a fully hosted service for crimes be a bad strategy? That's completely true. Same thing with Facebook or anything else, Twitter. Using it for crimes, content FBI.
One of the funny things actually that happened. So we'll just quickly talk about this GIF. It's like a little exploding slime, and the head is corrupted. So one of the fields that I can't remember which one of the dimension fields is just set to like FF or whatever, and if you look at it with like identify with image magic, it'll straight away just tell you that the dimensions are too large and image magic exits. I assume this is what's happening within Discord because there's no it's a unhandled exception, and it's only on the mobile app on iOS and on the other thing, Android. But yeah, it's just funny. Like was pasted into an unnamed, pretty large InfoSec Discord, and an InfoSec professional got very mad, telling us how dangerous it was to have an unhandled exception.
Yeah, I mean, people definitely got really wild about it. It's definitely funny, trolly, interesting. But yeah, there's been a few different parsing bugs. People use those. People are going to continue to leverage those. So again, don't have any private conversations. If somebody was smart or fast enough to be able to also chain that that crash with any other sort of bug, we've been pretty screwed. Same with this Spotify link, which I haven't posted in Discord yet because it actually apparently does crash Discord.
It destroys Discord.
Yeah, links. Actually, do you want to talk about it? What does it do?
So, somebody sent me. I was in a DM like a video call with somebody watching like a TV show, and my friend's like, "Yo, join this Discord," and I'm like, "All right." This dude only talks to me on 2 occasions, and they're both sketchy. Let's see what it is. So I click on the Discord, and as soon as I click on it, the second I joined, my Discord crashed. I was like, what the fuck? So, like, I couldn't open Discord because when you reopen Discord, it goes to the last server you were in, and that was that server. So I opened up Discord on the browser, which doesn't open the last one. It just opens to, like, your DMs or something. And I deleted the server, and then I reopened the desktop Discord so that I wasn't like crashing. So I DM'd him and I said, "What's in there?" Because it's obviously not like the server link that's crashing me. There's something in the server. So he just sends I can't send it here because it'll crash me. So he sends me like a pastebin with just a Spotify link. Like apparently the embed for the Spotify, I'm assuming, just like errors out, and I didn't look into it too much because I was literally in the middle of like watching a TV show with somebody, and like my Discord crashes. And they're like, "What's going on?" Because you can still talk if you're in a voice channel. You just can't use Discord. Like I couldn't leave the voice channel. It's just like Discord has crashed. Oh no.
I'll have to look into it more before I share it because it definitely seems fucking like a way to brick a Discord.
Well, so, I've realized with the GIF, especially since that GIF thing that DNZ was talking about came out or like was posted right before spoiler tags happened.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about spoiler tags is you can't post a link, so like if you post a link with spoiler tags, it doesn't embed; it hides the embed.
Yeah.
But if you post an image with the spoiler tags, it does.
Yeah. There's a weird ways about parsing it to definitely play with a bit, but
There's
yeah, I mean,
there's some
what's up?
other sketchy shit as well. So like I've been screwing around with the bot API, looking at some of the different undocumented events that are emitted from the WebSocket when you from the bot API, which is the same as a client API. Actually, it doesn't distinguish really. And yeah, there's like a lot of events that go on that, like, if somebody opens a DM with you and they don't even type anything, like stuff like that will is captured by Discord. And if you download your Discord data, like you go to the site and in the privacy settings you can request your data. It takes a couple of days, and it will have every IP you've ever logged in from, the device, the operating system, like everything you can imagine. And it has all your messages, even the ones you've deleted, in JSON format. So all the people that are using like those scripts that delete all your messages, like it's not very useful. So yeah, like it's good so that people can't like screenshot you, because there's a lot of like people that just like clip everything some like people say. And I guess like removing it is, one thing, but it's not removed from the server side. And yeah, like, but just going through the dump as well that they send you, you can actually you have like messages from a random person's ID, and it'll be an empty JSON object that has no messages in there, and I can only assume that's because somebody opened a DM with me and just never said anything. But some of the things that like are omitted as well out of the WebSocket are like, if somebody starts typing somewhere, it'll send a message to update your GUI, I guess. And yeah, like then you can use that, like it'll tell like links to the author object and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff people can use. It's definitely, there's a lot of integrations with it as well. So as you were saying, like definitely practice good OPSEC and practice just good general security practices. Don't download weird stuff people send you. Don't click on random links and assume everybody is screenshotting and recording everything you do, because they are.
Yeah, because they are. Yeah, it's not
the
a
government is.
Government's just random people too.
One thing I will say about what DNZ was saying was before Discord, so if you sent an image to Discord, right? It's like you upload an image. So let's say DNZ is being cheeky and he uploads an image of his ass to like general. Before, if you clicked on that before he deleted it, you could open the original and it would open in your web browser. So the image was still there. They now like sanitize that for the most part. So if somebody sends an image, if you open it in your browser before they delete it, obviously you still have it and you can save it. But if you just open it in Discord and before they delete it, like I send an image, you open it in Discord, so it's in the pop out, and then I delete it, and you try to open the original, it's not found.
Yeah, I saw that recently. Yeah.
I think it's a referencing. If it's not referenced, if that CDN hosted object is not referenced within any messages, so by the way, a DM between somebody is treated exactly the same as any other channel.
It is.
So like, yeah. So if there's no longer a reference, it's what, 3 days or something before it can be up to 3 days before it's removed from the CDN. I think was the estimate.
I've noticed it happening instantly.
It depends. Because actually I did the test of hosting a website on Discord CDN by having just going backwards with what I was putting on there, and yeah, it stays for a while. But a few days. But I deleted earlier. I had deleted stuff and it had persisted on the CDN, and I had just an HTML file with files referenced that I had already uploaded within that. So
what's the TTL on the object?
Yeah, I don't know how long it actually lasts.
There's been instances where it's been quick and been long, so maybe it's like a batch time.
Yeah, who knows? But actually we're kind of going over on the news, and I wanted to get to the last story we had real quick. This was about a security researcher who was assaulted by a vendor after trying to disclose a vulnerability. So there's some people here, some of them actually in our server, that had done some research on. They basically had found these casino kiosks that were used for managing rewards and account information about people at various casinos in like Las Vegas and all over the world, including at Caesars and things like that. And so they had apparently found that all the communications between the kiosks and the back ends were unencrypted in plain text, which is a big no-no for the fact that there's like credit card information, driver's license info, and everything else. But they also had just unauthenticated access to like FTP servers and things where this data was being stored. And they spent a while, trying to do the research on this. They had contacted the vendor that the FBI got in touch with them. A bunch of people got in touch with them. And then one of the researchers went to the ICE conference. It's a conference for, I don't know what ICE actually is, but it's one of the vendor conferences for this, and the CEO of the company, or the COO of the company, was doing a talk here, and they went to the conference to try to talk to him in person. And apparently the dude just, like, when they went to talk to him, like, grabbed him, ripped off his conference bag, like roughed him up, or his conference badge, roughed him up, told him that he wouldn't need the conference attendee badge anymore, and that he was going to keep it. Just like some weird like high school bully shit. Like, this reminds me of like, yeah, just like this is very, very weird. So
is there video of it anywhere?
I'm not sure. There's a video here. I don't know if this is a video of the actual.
It's the video what like directly after.
That's amazing.
Yeah. There's, I mean, you preface it with allegedly because there's people calling like Dan Gooden.
They did it.
Was saying he's looking for like corroboration.
Yeah. So, I mean, this sort of thing though is like, I mean, as much as if it's hearsay now, we definitely don't want to put people on blast for it. But this sort of like the fact that they're not getting any response from the vendor is such a classic tale. It's so difficult to disclose bugs in certain scenarios, especially with people that have a lot of pride, like anybody who's doing something with a casino or anybody who's in some sort of spooky defense sort of thing. A lot of those people don't want to hear that their stuff is vulnerable. They don't care. They want to push out their product and make the money. And so it's definitely not something that people here aren't familiar with. But yeah, the fact that this happened, I was waiting for something like this to eventually happen. So I'm assuming it did.
I haven't heard of this at all, and I'm telling you, this story has legs. If it's legit, that's crazy.
But also, like, this really reminds me of a story that I've heard from a time where it's also in the UK. So in earlier hacker days, when the UK was split, I believe, between the North and the South, with the black hats on one side and the white hats on the other side, there was I have heard a story where a black hat walked up to a white hat in the pub and square punched them in the face for the sole reason of they're on the other side. I thought that was pretty fucking hilarious. I don't condone it, but I guess it's just come around to now they're in the industry. Now it's an industry. It's the same thing, but with industry on top.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
don't condone it, but if you're gonna do it, at least record it.
Good news section. The lull of the week is the NSA branded webcam covers are see-through. Obviously, I don't think that the NSA would ever do anything that wasn't backdoored. So congrats, that was a great prank.
I mean, I think that could even be better than the CLSSP. That's an excellent joke.
It's good stuff. But yeah, so let's get into our interview here. pwrcycle, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Oh, hello. How you doing?
Hello.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. So yeah, I guess Nathan, do you want to start off with this one, or are you well? I know that you are sickly as well as me.
Sorry. I'm not well, but I am well enough to talk about one of my buddies that really has helped me through a lot of stuff and given me a lot of perspective in life, and that's the great pwrcycle. We met quite a while ago now, back in the day, and just a really smart dude. He has a really kick-ass history with DDoS mitigation and has dealt with some really cool things that I think, on a blue and defender side, a lot of us deal with things that kind of never see the light of day from a news cycle point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
because if it makes the news, then and you did that means you did a bad job.
yeah, exactly. But I thought he'd have some pretty good stories he might want to share, and that being said, yeah, buddy, I'll turn it over to you and kind of let
Yeah.
you give give people an idea of how you got into DDoS and how you built things up from there.
So yeah, do you want to go over a little bit, I guess, about your background and introduce like who you are, what you do, and then we can kind of get into some more of the details about stuff?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so how I got into DDoS was I was just looking for a job and I spammed my resume everywhere. And I got called by a recruiter. And this was when I was living in South. So turns out this recruiter was for Prolexic, the DDoS company. So I worked there for about 5 years. So that's really where I like cut my teeth on security and like live events and things like that.
That's cool. So I guess how long have you been in, I guess, for DDoS mitigation and active attack, mitigation itself?
2006 is when I started with Prolexic. So 2006 to 2010, I was with them. Then I took a year off and then wound up going to VeriSign, to their DDoS mitigation group up in Northern Virginia. So
that's awesome. So I guess one of the things I definitely want to ask is, how the landscape of this has changed, because you saw on our show notes here, there's just like silly little Perl script doing some flooding, but there's older attacks that have were more well known that are now, I guess, built into sort of like the mitigation for them are now built into certain products, and then certain things aren't really used anymore. Like, we're not seeing to be like charge in attacks. But I guess I wanted to know a bit more about your perspective about how the landscape has changed since 2006, because technology definitely has changed.
yeah, from my perspective, it's just sort of a wheel and everything kind of rotates around like every 4 or 5 years. So, like everybody, figures out memcache as a problem, and, they patch it and networks start to identify it and drop it. And then people rotate over to something else, to another protocol, another port. And then when all the UDP abuse stops, then they go to TCP. So they'll do SYN floods, just connection floods and stuff like that. And then when you start getting good at that, then they rotate to get floods, or trying to exhaust your database, things like that. And then when you implement WAFs and you get really good signatures versus those things, then they rotate back to UDP floods, and it's NTP or it's DNS again. So that's over the course of 10 years, that's what I see.
Okay, yeah. So I guess, do you want to walk us through a little bit about what are the first things you do in incident response? Because I feel like a lot of people, when this sort of thing happens, they either freak out or they assume that their stuff is going to be fine. And like, there's somewhere in the middle is the truth for it of, either be concerned about it or, like, I guess I want to just walk through how you actually address it when you start getting attacked.
Yeah. The assumption is that you have to break everything down into links. You know, there's your local server, there's your load balancer in front of that, there's your core router, there's maybe your border router. You know, is that even connected to maybe a backbone router? And all of these links along the way have capacity, and even if your server and your application can, you know, withstand, you know, 50 million application requests per second, on a network level, that's not going to happen. Things are going to start to fall down. So, so you have to think of it of any application or any service really as all of the pieces together, and you know, when you've got that, then the preparation for it is always just communication, being able to analyze your network and say, am I really under attack, or is this the CDN, you know, spidering me? And is this a good thing, or is this a bad thing? And then reacting smartly so that you don't turn your network into spaghetti, trying to implement quick fixes that, you know, on the whole are not going to matter anyway, if it's really someone who's serious about attacking you.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, what are some of the common misconceptions that people have about like DDoS, beyond just mitigations, but just like what people might think about it when you're going to like consult or, you know, address an attack?
I think the common thing is people think they can get one box or they can get one service, and that they can totally just outsource it and be like, oh, somebody else, you know, will deal with it, or this box will fix it for me. When it's always about integration, and then visibility around that integration. Because my thing is usually when I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, that's great that this machine does that thing, but what are you going to do when it starts to fail? Because you are by default putting this machine up to the highest capacity load that it could possibly take in the real world. Things fail like that. So, you know, you need to plan for those eventualities instead of considering them as edge cases.
Yeah, absolutely. No, because there's a lot of services that might try to build themselves as like the one-stop solution for it, but as you're saying, it's definitely not just one thing. And also the whole communication aspect is like really key. Yeah. So I guess, what are some of the bigger attack vectors that you might see up in? Oh, hold on one second. The bigger attack vectors that you're seeing up and coming, as far as DDoS stuff. There's been like the what's it called, CoAP, and other sort of different protocols that are being abused for IoT stuff. Are you seeing any new up and coming trends that might be of note?
The biggest trend was basically, you know, like with Mariah and the IoT exploits, it changes the network topology of the botnets. So with IoT botnet attacks, we saw those source IPs within the United States much more. And with those attacks, though, those networks don't allow them to spoof off of those IPs, so they wound up being more real IPs.
Just to clarify, you're talking about the Dyn attacks, right?
Yeah, and all of those attacks that were of that, you know, nature. But yeah, those were definitely one of them. So yeah, so like, you know, when, you know, like when I started, it was Joomla exploits. That was what botnets were made out of, because those were big, beefy servers that could be used for a lot of different things. And you know, sort of the criminal aspect of botnets is sort of to, you know, use the best as you can. So if you got a really good IP, you're not going to waste it on a DDoS. The DDoS is sort of the last thing you use a server for. And when you wind up with a lot of little, you know, webcams, those don't make good servers, but you know, they're just throwaways. You know, you don't even really make a full botnet of them. You just scan and grab a bunch and then do your thing. because it's almost too hard to actually keep them online. But they're like, nanobots that you can keep bunches of them online. So.
Is that kind of where you see it continuing to head direction-wise? Kind of this idea of nanobot nuts, where it's almost disposable bots that are quick infections, quick payload execution, and if it gets rebooted or whatever, it doesn't matter because of the pure volume of them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a good network connection, then you don't need a lot of hard drive storage. And especially if you're probably doing something illegal, you don't want to leave a lot of tracks behind. So you're going to pipe that through one socket and then directly out the other. And that's basically all you can do when you look at, a webcam. But that webcam's is probably hardwired, is going to have a really good interface and can do a lot of fast data. So that's what I've seen is really the bots themselves sort of change and evolve. And the wheel themselves of the new thing. So when the new stuff came out, then there was the new SYN floods and things like that. So that sort of drives the countermeasures that you apply, or the countermeasures that are popular at the time.
Yeah, I just actually got a kind of interesting idea based on what you were just talking about, video stream wise. There's just so many limitless avenues for DDoS. It'll never not be a thing, I guess one big thing is, have you seen anything that's especially taking hold in the IPv6 land?
Not really. It's always a question that everybody asks. It's usually a requirement that we architect and build for. But when it comes down to it, the first response is usually, we'll just turn off IPv6 if it's a problem. We don't even mitigate, because we can immediately fall back to IPv4, and we know what we're doing there. We have those measures. When you start doing 6, people are like, do you want to put, $1 million per minute traffic over something that nobody else has really fleshed out, and that people admit already has problems? So,
Do you think you might be able to go into some of your more fun and notable attacks that you've had to deal with or mitigate without breaking NDAs or anything like that?
Sure. So the first, and probably the one everybody knows the best, was when Anonymous attacked Scientology. So when this video of Tom Cruise was removed, a bunch of people got mad. They spun up a project called Chanology from 4chan and started attacking Scientology. And I actually took the phone call from Scientology to set them up, provision them. And then we as Prolexic continued to defend against those attacks for the next month, if not more. It was that attack on Scientology that really put DDoS in the forefront, and what got the attention of a lot of the financial institutions and the mass of the people. It had always been a network problem and an internet problem, but that really became a media event.
With so one of the most I guess media covered DDoS attacks was when Visa and MasterCard were getting DDoSed with Loic. Can we just go into how terrible Loic was as an attack?
Yeah, it was immediately obvious that it was Loic, basically because of the user agent, um, and and it was just repetitive on the same IP addresses. So a lot of the times the URLs that they attacked were not HTTPS even. When they were, we would usually have certain keys and be able to just decrypt them if we needed to on the fly. But yeah, it didn't obfuscate anything. It was just another tool that looked like a lot of the other amateur tools that people did DDoS with.
You were saying like the Scientology DDoS lasted for a month. Like that seems like it's on the like up there with like the 1% of how long a lot of these attacks would last. What do you say is like the average range for an attack, like length of time?
So I would say think of somewhere around 3 days. Is how I would put it. But it really depends on who the adversary is. If they're just out for extortion and they're just drive-by threatening and demanding, in my mind, like if you don't pay, eventually they move on. If you don't give them anything, they're going to move on because they've got to make some money, and they got to make money by going and extorting somebody else. So that's the common scenario that I tell people.
Is that usually what you find yourself having to be called in to professionally mitigate? Meaning, obviously there's booter sites and stuff like that, but those, as far as I remember, those only do like 600 seconds and really small time frames. Do you find that you generally never respond to those professionally? That those are just kind of wait a few minutes and it'll go away?
No, they're totally problems because people would just come back and hit somebody every hour, or they would hit somebody during the day repeatedly, just when uh, 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 just to make a disruption. And that's what DDoS really is. It doesn't need to be a sustained attack, of high volume for 24/7, 365. Like if you were, for instance, a casino, if I can keep you offline right before the Super Bowl, then I just cause the greatest amount of harm. I don't have to do it for a long time. But if I can keep you that hour before the Super Bowl, that's the hour people bet. If I can keep you offline the day before the Super Bowl, that's probably more than half your money.
That's awesome. It's a good explanation.
So, could you maybe walk us through a typical DDoS mitigation, like in a response, step by step?
Yeah, I can try. So mostly it starts with some sort of alert that hopefully you've set up to be some threshold somewhere. But so are you asking from like the internal standpoint or from like the prolexic sort of like response of somebody else aspect?
Yeah, like on prolexic side.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially the company's been attacked, or if they're not a customer and they're coming on like Scientology was, they're under attack. They need protection immediately. And usually if you need immediate protection, then you give me your certain key. I set up a proxy for you and you're in business. And that's the simplest, easiest, quickest solution to the problem. Your back end, could be a problem, but it's still mobile. There's other places, there's other solutions. If you're a larger company, and you don't want to give up your certain key, for instance, let's say you're a financial institution, then you've got to do some more network BGP setup, and that can take like 24 hours in order for things to correctly populate. But what you're doing is essentially So do you want to know from the proxy standpoint or the BGP standpoint?
BGP.
Yeah. So the client will have some sort of connection to you with BGP, just like they do their ISP. So they have a connection which they can then announce their path through Prolexic, just as if Prolexic was their local, AT&T provider in their data center. Essentially, Prolexic becomes or whatever the service is, becomes a third ISP, and now that service can broadcast that announcement, hopefully over there through all of their network, and be able to better manage the intake of all the data and mitigate it at the far reaches, so that it's not being backhauled over the Pacific Ocean into SJC. Hopefully you could eliminate that in Asia, and the same thing with Europe. That way maybe you don't backhaul it all the way to IED.
Thank you.
So during when you get the call, it is like, oh shit, we're under attack right now, and it's a relatively large organization that has multiple change requests or other policy bullshit that you can't just do your thing. What is the sort of maybe one or two top things that you wish companies would have just already done themselves, like had the foresight to be like, oh, one day we might get DDoS?
Do a walkthrough, a very calm, very deliberate walkthrough.
So just going like, okay, so if we were to get like SYN flooded, it would hit this point, this point, this point through our network, or like what?
Yeah. Consider that like one thing fails. Consider that multiple things fail, all the way up from your app all the way up to your ISP. Consider what happens to you when your ISP says, you are so much of a problem for us right now, we have to just drop your announcement so that our other customers can stay online. That was that was a frequent story as a DDoS service. That was a story I heard many times. Was people would tell me, I don't want to be your customer, but I have been told if I don't buy your service, I won't be in business. So, and to your point of change requests, when it comes down to it, people are like, okay, this is real world right now business. We're down hard, and they will bring the people online to execute those change requests immediately. Big, larger financial institutions have much more requirements and double checking and things like that, but it still happens when it has to happen, sort of thing.
Cool. So from a mitigation standpoint, I guess I don't know how much you can what's secret source and what's but I mean, are you talking about like multiple points of null routing, or like are you just dropping it at like really beefy proxies? Like, is there any sort of things that kind of you can tell us that set you apart, I guess, that like really or is that all secret sauce?
I would love for it to be and say it was all me, but like most of my career has been changing devices and keeping up with new mitigation tools, new mitigation equipment, because you eventually get down to where this one device is great at SYN floods, but it's terrible at UDP floods. And this device is great at this and that, but the hot attack of the day may be all the way down to inside encrypted traffic. So now you've got to proxy everything. What I guess I've been able to do is I just keep adapting to whatever the attacks are. I'm really like a command line guy. I like to look at the raw traffic itself, and I like to try to diagnose and look at things with multiple ways, so that I can look at things. Hopefully I can look at London traffic and I can compare that to San Jose traffic, and I can get some idea of what's real, what's not, because presumably as a service, someone just flipped their traffic over to me, and I haven't had a week to look at their traffic and profile it and make good thresholds. So I just have to eyeball it. And you have equipment behind you that you've already set up to be like, oh, these are the common attacks, and these are these are probably what we're going to get attacked with. But I just always stay paranoid to stay in front of it, of like, oh, they could be throwing something new at me. Maybe my thresholds aren't that tight. I need to identify what's going on and apply the countermeasure to the attack that's happening, instead of just throwing it back and saying, well, I got a device that does it, sort of idea.
Do you know of any, or have you heard of any kind of DIY things that either small or medium-sized businesses could deploy or implement that are effective enough to kind of keep away the more garbage tier DDoS, kind of like the 50 gigabit from a booter service? Obviously, DIY stuff's probably not going to mitigate 500 gigs a second, but kind of the lower throughput attacks. Is there anything that you know of in that space that you've found to be effective, or is it really just a game that is not easily played?
It's not easily played, and it's not easily implemented, because a lot of times you're asking for some security changes or implementations on networks, and people don't like that because it interferes with the commerce and the things they built. But like the two biggest things are for networks. Like, if you don't use the UDP protocol, then drop it at your border. Don't let it in at all. Manage what you do. That way, people can't scan you internally. When your developers accidentally leave stuff exposed. And then, sort of on the system side of it, just lower your connection times so that you time out faster. So that when people hit you with SYN floods or ACK floods or just out of state anything, so that your tables clear faster. That way, you're less likely to get filled by the rather simple sort of things.
You think Cloudflare is a pretty obvious win for people with pretty low budgets?
I mean, it's free, so yes. Absolutely. I've worked with all of the different services, so it's they really come at DDoS sort of at a different angle, in having many points of presence, and that works for what they're doing. It becomes a problem in the management for their side of it, but it seems they manage their network pretty well. But yeah, why not use it?
Have you seen Google Shield or any of the other ones that are kind of experimental and out there?
Yeah, I had a friend that did some work with Google Shield that around the Krebs stuff, and what they're mostly going for. Shield mostly goes after free or notable people, and gives it away sort of as that service, just so that I think they could learn the service, because the secret in the industry for a while was Google was just so big that they didn't even monitor what they did. They would just absorb everything.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they would get attacked and not know it. Therefore, you could reflect off of them, and they were just this big bouncy ball that things would come in and off of, and
That's just crazy.
Yeah, there's a few companies that operate like that where they just don't care about DDoS incoming. They have big enough pipes that they're just like, oh, okay, whatever. Which is like kind of a crazy way of operating, but I've definitely seen it myself. I know a lot of the bigger Fortune 500 companies tend to act that way. I don't know. Would you would you think that's a good idea to continue operating in that way, man?
well, no, they get much better at it. Most people do. Eventually it becomes a real expense or a real disruption.
Yeah, I think I heard you mention one time in one of your talks that DDoS is a lot like a hurricane. Um, it's not something that you're gonna ever fully mitigate. It's something that you kind of have to weather the storm, be prepared for, and be ready to recover. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit and give give some people some advice, maybe
Yeah.
for networks that aren't like super rich, don't have a lot of money to throw around on DDoS mitigation?
Yeah, the whole I gave a talk that the title was DDoS is more like a hurricane, and it was kind of as a response to a lot of people would get very militaristic in their metaphors and in their mindset in response, and I never really found that attitude worked. So part of it, I think, was because Prolexic was headquartered in South Florida, and while I lived there, there was just hurricane after hurricane those years. So I lived through a bunch of hurricanes. So that's kind of where the metaphor comes from. But like when I saw so many customers, get attacked, and when you just see it become normal, um, the the people who react to it calmly and prepare for it and work it, work the situation, then those are the ones that survive. The people that get so frustrated and want to really hack back. That was the common theme or the common attitude. Um, that really doesn't like help the situation. Unless you're just straight up hacking their botnet or hacking their CNC, which is totally a possibility, and has happened in some situations. Uh, for the common, response, it doesn't work. Fighting back doesn't work. So the best thing to do is just batten down the hatches and do what you can. Keep your communication lines open, be able to talk to your ISP, be able to talk to your data center, be able to talk to your other services, be able to talk to your customers. And at some point the things turn. Either you get your service tight enough where you can withstand the attack and still be up, or the attackers just get bored and go away.
Don't shoot the hurricane.
Always shoot the hurricane with cows.
It's like pissing in the wind.
Absolutely. Hey, we got a couple of Twitch chat questions that I kind of wanted to go over real quick too. Two from Black Owl. One of them is, are slow LoRaWAN, they're kind of the same. Are slow LoRaWAN attacks still a thing? And have you seen server-side vulns being leveraged to DOS real servers, like uploading images with large dimensions to consume memory, or anything with low traffic volume but high impact?
Yeah, definitely. The the service exhaustion, which I kind of refer to as sort of attacking the database. You know, it is sort of the same thing. It's just requesting really, really large images so that their cache just sort of fills up with all of that stuff, and then everything's really slow. You know, and I saw some great talks by the guys at Netflix with their Chaos Monkey.
Have you tried turning it off and on?
Oh man.
It's back on. Lydia's back on.
Yep, looks good for me.
Yeah.
Looks like it's back. And then is interpreter back? Yeah, interpreter is back.
We're live.
I wasn't allowed to get the computer either.
Well, see, as we said, DDoS is like a storm, and we just had to wait it out, and now we're back.
Stay calm. So the question that we were on right before we left was Slolaris, and I think it was around the part where you mentioned why Slolaris was good.
Yeah,
just recap it real quick, probably.
Okay, yeah, I'll try. Slolaris was good because it analyzed its target and sort of set its attack speed at varying levels, so it made a really good it made a really good example, and not a lot of the attack tools got as sophisticated as that. They just sort of slammed away at whatever the vulnerability was, without really caring to try to analyze or anything like that.
Cool. And then the next thing that came up while we were down as well was someone had mentioned that the Jester had redirected DDoS traffic by redirecting his domain, was the guess. Someone had been prosecuted for that, apparently.
I just remember sometime back in was it 2008 or somebody like that, and it may have I wouldn't even say the name, but I think it was another hacker who was continually getting attacked and was redirecting it against his enemies, and people started to like press charges, or there was something about that, because it was one thing to get attacked, but it was another thing to actively direct it to someone else, which was, you know, just again misuse. The common thing at the time, people, when they got attacked, if they could not do anything else, then they would just redirect the A record back to 127.0.0.1. That way, at least the attack didn't go anywhere off of that local network of the attacking server.
That's so crazy. I never heard the story though, that somebody got in trouble for redirecting to other targets. That's amazing. Not cool. I'm still not sure which denial of service attacks use the A records in the attack. Typically, like, especially like distributed reflective attacks, you just type in the IP that you're targeting and it spoofs that IP, doesn't it? Or was it some other type of attack that actually uses the A record?
Well, like a lot of the tools may take an IP address or they take a domain name. And what I sort of came to a conclusion of, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I sort of think of that the attacker is not the guy who wrote the tool for the most part.
Fair enough. True.
Yeah. So that they don't know what that, you know, that there's only 5 user agents that it rotates through. They think it's cool. Oh, I'll rotate through this, you know, whereas, you know, you could have 100, you know, if you wrote it yourself or something. So it's sort of, you know, but even if you wrote at that level, then at some point I just take all of those as part of the signature and I just have even more data to profile you now.
That's amazing. So, generally speaking, it's likely just due to infamiliarity of basic networking in a way. with some of these attackers that are using tools that they're not very familiar with?
Yeah, they, you know, in essence, kind of are in a lot of cases, script kiddies
Yeah.
that are teenagers. And this is one of the things about my talk about it sort of being the idea of a hurricane versus a military war mindset. You know, if you're, do you want to go to war with script kiddies? You know, what's your war mindset for a 14-year-old? Because that's probably who's attacking you.
Right.
Time out. No Xbox for a week.
Wow.
Spoof a call to his mom's cell phone from his high school, say he got caught smoking a J behind the dumpster.
Well, it quite literally does come down to no Xbox for a week, though, because fucking Lizard Squad decides no Xbox for a week.
Oh my god.
But you know, it's a lot of the times people that are running scripts or they find exploits, and even the thing they exploited or the botnet that they exploited, they don't really see what it looks like when they attack. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, you know, we used to find other network providers who had network graphs, like live graphs, and we would attack them just to see how much power we had as a botnet.
Oh, right. Yeah, the ever popular D-stats, right?
Yeah, because you know you run the exploit and you don't know really what you're exploiting. You just have an idea. You don't know really the disbursement of the IP addresses usually. So I just don't think that there is a lot of accidental success in DDoS. Because not only can you be more powerful than you really think you are, but you can also panic the other person into oh my god, this is going to happen every day for the rest of my life, sort of deal. When that's not that's not true. That this is not un unmitigatable. If you're attacked, you're probably not the first person to be attacked.
Yeah.
There is a process that your ISP has, your service provider, something has, to deal with what's going on. So my number one rule is always straight up, don't panic.
Right. Hey, what do you think is going to happen with the web stressor now that webstressor.org got seized, and I think the NCA and FBI said they're going after everybody that had a subscription?
I don't know about it.
Oh yeah, so recently they announced that everybody who subscribed to one of the bigger stressors out there is in for a visit relatively soon. And I think I don't know, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably a couple 100,000 users at this point, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know about that story, but I've heard that story, a lot of times of botnets disguised as stressors or one way or the other, which is almost always, stressors, which are actually, and people trying to monetize them. So, why people would subscribe to them, like you guys earlier were talking about, sending your address to a hacker guy, send you a CISP certification. I don't know. It's it just seems sort of like what someone would do if they were 14 years old.
Yeah.
So in the case of like I've written an application and application is deployed and it's in a dev environment, it's set up how I expect it, and I actually want to I want to test my limits without being a dick to my provider. Is there anything that you can say, is a legitimate form of, I actually hate the term stressing, but stressing without, being a ridiculous skid monetized botnet?
Well, if it's your endpoints and your links, then it's not a problem. So long as you're going through whatever limits or the capacity of the networks that you've got to go through. So it's really hard to if you want to do like 1 gig tests, those are pretty common now from companies that want to validate things. And but I don't know if that's answering your question, but
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's just like there's times where, like you mentioned, doing walkthroughs before, and there's obviously a lot of services out there that claim to be stressors and testers and stuff like that, and telling apart obviously the DDoS kitty ones versus the ones that look like they actually have thought of a business model seems to be fairly easy, but still running a stressor against your own service is throwing data at it. So it's just so if it's your own links and you're within a relatively, I guess, same amount of data that you're throwing at it, and you're not damaging services on the same rack as you.
I mean, what would happen if you sent yourself an ISO file via UDP?
Yep, that's actually what I was gonna follow up with is, you could say, well, yeah, as long as you're not damaging anything, but how do you know anything's gonna be 100% safe? So I I don't know about that. Again, like you said, what happens if you send an ISO to yourself over UDP? That could take an entire link down. Who knows? Or it could be perfectly fine and just simulate a DDoS attack. I don't.
Yeah, my concept of it there was, if I paid for a server and I paid for a link on that server, there's probably some limit to that link, whether it's a meg or a gig or 10 gigs.
Yeah.
So if I were going to stress myself, I would try to stay within the limits of that stress, just because I know what those limits are. When you start to deploy a botnet that is randomly infecting random things, then and then you direct all of that power back to one central point. You're not just stressing a known system for the purpose of testing. You're just abusing the network.
It does bring up the age-old question, and you and I have had this discussion quite a few times over the years. The opt-in botnet. I really want to do it. I want to create this mystical opt-in botnet where you're joining a botnet. It's all very clear. You're
I
agreeing
actually
to
think
educational purposes.
Exactly.
So like Facebook, basically.
It's called DDoS
Well,
Coin, and it's available.
Yeah, well, I can make it an emoji DDoS cam.
Wait, what's it? Okay.
Like from the news article is the first thing, the emoji cams that had all the malware in them. Like if you just straight up told people this is malware and it still made you a cute panda, people would still install them.
Yeah, I really think they would. It sounded like DNZ. Did you say there's actually one that exists though?
Well, we covered this a long time ago on like sometime last year, and there was a proof of work DDoS coin where it used TLS connections to verify the proof of work, and by participating in the DDoS in a denial of service, you received tokens which you could spend probably on other ridiculous skid shit. But somebody put enough thought into it to produce that.
Wow. I actually don't recall that. That's kind of interesting. It seems like a lot of conspiracy charges, though.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Like if you could spend the coin, like if you could spend the coin, the token, if you could spend the token on selecting where the network is pointed, it's like, oh, if I participate in DDoS, I get to DDoS like Xbox.
I
My
get to commit
neighbor.
more crimes.
Yeah, and it's on an immutable blockchain of my crimes.
Yeah, it's like It's an echo chamber of more jail time each time you use it.
My lawyer can't say shit about it because it's cryptographically verified.
Military grade encryption too.
We got one more, a couple more questions real quick from the chat. One of them is from Femto Do We Know, who says, "Hi pwrcycle. IoT devices are frequently resource limited. Small flash. What kind of things should a firmware/hardware engineer try to implement when making internet connected devices? For example, Microchip has the LW mesh stack. Examples with AES encrypted comms, but that's it." I guess he's talking mainly about like for people who are making IoT devices, what are the sort of things that they should look out for I guess designing it to make it not be abusable in a botnet.
Probably the biggest thing would auto update, because once IoT devices get deployed, people just forget about them. So that would be like the number one thing. So like whenever it was powered off and it just came back online, just really securely check if you can update, because that's a lot of what happens is people with Mariah and stuff would get infected. They'd have a problem with it. They would power it off. They would reset the machine. It would work again. And then it would get scanned and it would have the default password and it would get hacked again. And now you're back to the same problem. So unless it gets updated, you're never really going to solve it.
Yeah. I mean, even like the malware, even the horrible shit tier malware still has an update feature in most cases to be able to connect back to a CNC somewhere. So yeah, I mean, taking that design principle is definitely a huge thing.
Yeah, I think also if you are designing IoT and you're looking at what sort of encrypted comms and stuff, like that probably doesn't matter. AES 128 with CBC from some random Arduino library is probably not, it's not going to be your military grade encryption that you require.
With some of the research I did of the devices, there were cases where the hardware manufacturer left backdoors in the system to which the software developers were never even could have fixed themselves. So a lot of it comes down to not even trusting what you're given, and really trying to turn the security back on itself and assume that, okay, that could be a problem, maybe set up, firewalls, particularly internally, to make sure that extra hop sort of things don't happen to a known vulnerable port that you just can't get rid of, maybe.
Yeah, I think with IoT, small flash stuff as well, like if you're doing any kind of encryption, like that's where it leads into the resource generation DOS that you were talking about before, like DOSing an embedded device that's trying to do cryptographic functions without any sort of hardware support at all. It's going to eat those minute resources it has anyway. So if you like continually are trying to handshake against it, it's continually trying, wasting cycles on that it doesn't really have to spare. So I guess it's all about that threat model and what attack vectors you expect, and doing that walkthrough like you said.
Yeah, just always assume that your first answer is going to fail. No plan of battle ever survived contact with the enemy. So, just assume that the right people are not going to be available. Assume that your newest engineer is going to be the guy on shift. Assume that the attack is larger than local things, and you have to reach outside your company. You have to reach outside your comfort zone and say, who would I reach to?
The last question that we have on here, real quick, is how many DDoS attacks were successful due to the mitigation service provider's failure and not directly due to the attack?
Well, it would totally happen. Like you've got a network. You are a network provider just as if you're an ISP. You're just more of a virtual ISP. But there were always times where people would fat finger a backbone and something would go down. You know, or there would be a firmware bug that, you know, even just normal load, but left to its own devices for, you know, so many months would crash itself. And you know, as I said, I was always on the constant edge of changing things sort of to keep up with the maximum throughput of whatever we were dealing with. So it became common to me to expect that things would fail, and to always go back and look every single time, every single data center, as many links as I could, constantly, just to know the network and know the traffic.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Oh yeah, well, thanks very much for coming on and talking to us about all this stuff. It's been really awesome to chat with you and get your insight on a lot of things.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Hell yeah. And thanks everybody for listening and sticking in through, even though we went offline for a little bit. We'll definitely figure out what happened. We'll definitely figure out what happened there. But yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out and chatting with us. I wanted to give another shout out, or special shout out, to our Patreon people. Dusty Fresh, Sterling Archer, No Cookies, Big Hacks, doing big things over there. Hamburger Keyboard, Walski, Woodsman, Matt H, Talon, James, Rain, Mayur, Ire, Who, Zors, Brian L, Gabe, 688 AS, Dilesh, DVD Freitag, and Rufflewitz. Thanks everybody. You've made our
I want to know,
really good.
Would we be violating copyright if we made some Adidas tracksuits in true Russian Slavic style?
So I don't.
Shut up, industrial.
Hey, real quick, pwrcycle, I think you had two things. I knew you had your VPN thing. If you wanted to plug that real quick before we bounce.
Oh yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I also run a service called Cloak VPN, and it's kind of cool because I accept Monero and sort of set up the payments through the Monero blockchain. But if anybody needs a VPN service, go check it out, cloakvpn.com.
And if you're worried about logging, you could actually ask him directly about the logging. And there's none.
Yeah, I don't log anything.
Thanks for coming on, dude.
Thank you.
Hell yeah. So thanks everybody for listening. Did all our shout outs. We'll be back next week. So we will see you soon. Hold on, let me try to get this music back up. Hopefully it doesn't explode again. And boom. All right. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.